Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Event Tech Talk Show. I'm Adam Parry, and today I'm joined by Adam Lewis, founder of BBD Boom. They are a CRM and revenue technology consultancy helping events and publishing businesses get more out of platforms like HubSpot. Now, Adam is not your typical tech guy. Yes, he knows his way around a CRM implementation, but in this conversation, we go somewhere a bit different. We talk about what it actually feels like to be a man running a business in an industry that's moving at a pace none of us really signed up for. The pressure of endless tech adoption, AI-driven productivity, and the gap that exists when it comes to men talking openly about when things get hard. Adam also is quietly writing a book, one I suspect a lot of fathers out there are going to need. And we'll get into that a little bit later. This one is honest, a little raw in places, and I think genuinely important. I hope you enjoy it. Adam, thank you very much for joining me on an episode of the podcast today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I've obviously given you that little bit of an introduction, but I think it's always nice for people to understand a little bit about what brought you to where you are now, BBD Boom, and kind of the current role that you run in the organization. So if you could tell us a little bit more about your history, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So if I think about where we are now, and I'll tell you about how I got here. So now we're running a CRM consultancy that specializes in HubSpot. We work across lots of different industries, but our main one is events and publishing. And, you know, we're now one of Europe's biggest CRM consultancies, which is amazing. I set the business up 10 years ago with my business partner, Emma. And yeah, we've been on that entrepreneur's journey of building something from nothing, all the trials and tribulations. And the whole way along there, just, you know, really focused on building a quality team of professionals who can advise, not just on the sort of technology of all of this stuff, but also the processes and the people side and the adoption side of it. And then I sold the business last year, which we can talk about later. And now we're forming a new company, which is called Saloy. But yeah, in terms of my journey, I think, you know, I always wanted to run my own business. And when I was a child, I think that's what I wanted to do. I think was fascinated by business, fascinated by technology. So I feel really, really lucky about where I've ended up.
I think that was one of the more interesting things when we were kind of chatting in the lead up to this episode of the podcast was that journey. What made you do it again after successfully exiting a business? Was it just that inherent kind of desire to continue to create? Did you feel like the job wasn't actually finished?
Well, yeah, I mean, you'll know this as well, Adam, being an entrepreneur, but I think essentially there's just something in you, isn't it? There's like an energy and a drive which is sort of unstoppable. And you always need to be doing something. In my case, it's creating. I think I've understood that recently, is that I just have this innate desire to create things and build things because I get so much satisfaction out of it. So it's not about the money. It's not about the kudos for me. It's about just feeling like I'm contributing and I'm making something and I'm making the world better and I'm helping people and I'm helping customers. And the technology, like I say, I love the technology, so I could tinker with technology. And as we'll go on to talk about, especially AI, till the cows come home late into the night. So I just have a real passion for it, I suppose, really. And, you know, in 2016, I took myself out to the Inbound conference, which is HubSpot's annual conference, which is held in Boston normally. And I thought, you know, I paid for that off my own back. I went out there out of pure curiosity, really, about, you know, I'd heard about HubSpot. I'd heard about what a great thing it was. And I went there and I walked into the room and I was like, this is it. This is my tribe. The people that love technology, that love marketing and sales and customer service and looking after customers and growing businesses. And I just immediately felt at home. And so now, we're building Saloy. It's just an extension of that, really. It's just a continuation of that journey to helping businesses grow with HubSpot. And obviously we're able to work with bigger, more complicated customers as we go.
I'd love to come on to what you're doing with HubSpot and where the gap is for the events industry. I know we have lots of individuals that are on HubSpot. I know a number of my friends who are organizers are on HubSpot. I think there's also kind of the industry's been attracted towards Salesforce. I'd be interested to see from your point of view kind of like the major differences and the benefits and things like that you see and stuff. But before we go on to that, you know, having been in business for so long and kind of made that shift from selling to building again, What's kind of like some of the major shifts that you've seen maybe over the last 3, 4, 5 years in the way that as business owners we go around kind of operating a business and running a business and supporting a team and customers and things like that?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question, big question. I mean, I think that one of the things that Emma and I built the business on was, there's two of us. One was inward facing and one was outward facing. So I was like sales and customers and marketing and all that stuff. And Emma was like culture, people, finance, operations. And looking back on it now, I mean, you can't survive, you can't thrive unless you've got that in balance. And so for example, it's very easy to think, well, we better go and just sell, but then you win some business, and then you've got to deliver that and support and keep the clients happy, and then it's easy for the pendulum to swing over the other way, like we're really busy with customers, so we can't sell. And you just got to solve that problem, otherwise you're not going to move forward. And I think through our resilience and tenacity, we did that. And so your question about what's changed in the last 5 years, I don't think that's changed. I think, like resilience, determination, relentlessness. And then I think there was a big moment for me when I realized that as we got bigger and we got to like 20 odd people, it's like culture took on a life of its own and became really the most important success factor. So being a kind of salesy type person, I was thinking, well, that's, culture, that's sort of less important. We've got to win business, we've got to keep the clients happy. But then when you've created, and we're really proud of the culture we've created, and I think then the culture takes you to the next level because you've got people who feel safe, their psychological safety, they feel valued, they feel supported and pushed as well, like they're being challenged and they're learning and they're developing. So that cultural bit is massive. And I think we live in a world where the old playbook of just sort of crack the whip and expect people to work really hard till 14 hours a day and deliver results doesn't work. And then you've got the technology side of it, which is obviously what we do as a business. And the technology side, and I think we'll go on to talk about AI a bit more, but I think it is a huge enabler. And if you can get the technology right, which we have done, because you'd hope so, because that's our business, building the infrastructure on how you generate marketing and push out marketing and look after customers and nurture, and how you have a structured sales process and how you're able to forecast accurately. And then how do you look after customers when they become customers? Having the technology to manage that customer life cycle is absolutely crucial. So all of those things and many, many more, I think it's about the mindset. I think it's about looking after people, having the right culture. And then I think it's having the technology stack to kind of hold it all together.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to culture, but really interesting thing I saw, and it kind of leads me maybe to the first question is, so I think it was a report this morning that Anthropic in the last quarter, please forgive me if I got these statistics wrong, or maybe it was last month, did 6 billion in revenue. And the people that were discussing this were like, where has that come from? Because they did more revenue in 1 month than I think Databricks and Snowflake did in like the last half of the year or the quarter or something like that. And it came from, obviously their intuition was telling them that it's about enabling a team, right? So it's the cost of labor, essentially. So I guess I've kind of got a question that's kind of like coming from two angles. You've mentioned obviously a keen interest in the technology and the use of technology and the culture with the team. So how are you balancing? I know I'm going a little bit off script here, Adam, but like how do you balance that there with like pushing the team to use technology, maybe using it yourself, but still making sure culture and relationships and things are at the forefront of that? Because I don't know how you feel, but a little observation from me is the promise of AI freeing up time, for me, is a fallacy. It's a lie, especially somebody with my personality. It's not, I don't free up time, I just do more. Where do you think that sits in your organization as well?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, the bit you talk about now, I call that, or people call it the productivity paradox, I think, which is the idea that we're using technology, any technology, to be more efficient, and then you have more time. And then what do you do with that time? Well, some people, lucky people, know how to do nothing with that time and relax and have headspace.
That's my wife.
But the rest of us, what's headspace? Yeah. But the rest of us are going, great, well, that worked really well and was really efficient. So let's do some more of that then. And then you end up still working long hours. So I think that is something we're waking up to with AI. you're right. It's not the productivity home run that we all thought it would be. So trying to, and I'm seeing it with people in our team now where they're experimenting with AI and they're having these like euphoria, these eureka moments. They have euphoric moments where they're like, wow, I've just done this. And so they get these moments of like real highs where they've realized they can do something now in 5 minutes that took them half an hour. And that's great. And in theory, that means they should have headspace. But then, AI is, for the individual productivity, is you can lose all your productivity by constantly experimenting and constantly going down different rabbit holes of trying to fix this and learn this. So I don't know. I mean, we're still really early in it all, aren't we? So I think I don't have any answers. The team doesn't have any answers, but we're just making sure that we are having an honest conversation about AI and what it's doing for us and what it's not doing for us, and is it helping us? Is it really helping you? I think in the sales world, if we can present something that would take, it really articulately and really visually in a way that you can't really do with PowerPoint slides, that's an absolute home run. And we've seen that at the minute with sales guys talking to the media and events industry, where they're able to show the architecture of HubSpot or the detailed timeline. And it just makes sense for customers. And that would have taken them such a long time to do that in PowerPoint, and it just never would have been as good.
Yep.
So that's the win. When it comes to customers, we are having conversation with customers about, does this mean that I need less people?
Mm.
And that's a huge sort of ethical conversation, and we don't really want to be helping people make that decision per se. We want to help people use technology to get the best out of the people and enable the people.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and that's a pretty tough question.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting story where Klarna, I think, replaced an astronomical number of people, and clearly a financial director somewhere was looking at the bottom line and saying, well, if we can replace everybody with AI with this, then we're going to save all this money and make the shareholders really, really happy. And that actually backfired on them because it was too efficient, believe it or not. People didn't feel like they were being heard or supported by real people. So it's interesting how intrinsically people see value in talking and being with people rather than just efficiently getting the answer kind of thing.
Totally,
do you think there's a potential though also to slip the other way of over engineering solutions for simple problems?
Definitely, because when you start coding with Codex or Claude Code or things like that, you're like a kid in a sweet shop. You can do it. You feel like you can do anything. And then you start building things, and then you realize that you're not a developer and you don't really understand about IT infrastructure and cybersecurity. And you lose track of what service does what and what app does what. And then I feel like we could all end up in a situation where we've made our lives much, much more complicated. Because we've got, this concept of bring your own device. When people used to bring their own mobile phones to the office and they have their email on it. And then the corporate IT people didn't like that because they were looking at email on there and not on the system that they were controlling. Well, imagine what it's like now. Like shadow IT, shadow AI. I mean, what happens if you have thousands of employees just going off doing their own thing? I mean, where's the common goal? Where's the common IT infrastructure? So I think this is all going to start to come out in the next 6 to 12 months, where people realize that there needs governance and guardrails around what individuals are doing within a company, not just for the security of the company, but also for the safety, like if you like, to your point about the safety of the individual, just getting carried away and overwhelmed and losing track of things. That is something that is going to happen. I mean, I've got team members that are up till like midnight on it. Nobody's asked them to, but they're just carried away with it. Wow.
It's like dopamine fulfilling, isn't it? Really, actually, that seeing things, seeing an input and an output is very like, ooh, what can I do here? And what if I do this? And then I can do this. And that does present that, again, back to that paradox of like doing more, but potentially doing more just for the sake of doing more and over engineering solutions and stuff like that, which actually brings me nicely segueing back into HubSpot. And I'm really interested to hear your opinion on this, because I've admired HubSpot for many years. I'm arguably, totally honestly, not a current HubSpot user. But I have also been to Inbound and had the same feeling as you. Very just everybody being in a room under the same vibe with the same mission or similar missions, all coming together as a real community. Actually, I think they've done a fantastic job of building community within their business. But that aside, from what I can see, a winning solution, right, really up there as a challenger to Salesforce and other solutions that are out there. But then I see these conversations happening online, which is like, oh, vibe code your own HubSpot in a weekend kind of thing. Like, what's your opinion when you see those kind of comments? Because I think people could quite easily get pulled into that and go, oh, well, what is it ultimately? It's just data in a database and presented to me in a way kind of thing. Like, what do you think about those comments that you see like that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole industry, SaaS industry, is trying to get its head around the reaction to Anthropic, I think it was, Claude, that literally dropped the share price of all SaaS companies overnight. And, my experience of building apps and building things is that, yes, you can do some stuff and do some really cool stuff that's on a one-to-one basis, small teams, and very particularly like, HTML front end, you can do some amazing things. That is not a CRM. To build a CRM that not only is very technically safe and sound and cybersecurity and able to connect into your email and integrate into other systems. There's a lot of intellectual property in that. So that is not going to be easily replicated. The other thing then is that, HubSpot, and this is why it's such a great fit for the events and publishing sector, right? It's a go-to-market growth engine platform, really. And it has a lot of, it's learned through the years, it's built processes and ways of doing things that work so well for the event and publishing industry that are kind of out of the box. So when you think about lead scoring or nurture automations or just simple stuff about how you take people from a form and how you control forms and put those into the CRM, that's all done and dusted and tried and tested. So you're not just buying software, you're buying processes that you can pick up and go with. And I just think that there's definitely some tools, SaaS tools, that are going to suffer big time. But I think a big platform like Salesforce, like HubSpot, it's an embedded customer engagement platform. It's not something that you can just replicate. And so, yeah, I think what we will see in the next 6, 9, 12 months is the share price of the leading SaaS platform starting to go back up when people realize that. I mean, it's just such a blanket reaction that you cannot regard all SaaS platforms as the same. They all do different things and they're more embedded and they're more customized. So yeah, I'm pretty optimistic that the share prices will bounce back.
I totally agree with that, Adam, because I think there's so much that you don't. And listen, I've created my own platform, and I know you've been tinkering and building some cool stuff in the background as well. But it's, building it is one thing. Then you've got to maintain it and support it. And things, believe it or not, things stop working for some reason because something changes somewhere else in a database or something else that you're using to kind of bring it all together. And then you need to go in there and support that. And I don't think anybody really gets into business unless you're getting into the CRM business of maintaining a CRM and a database, right? That's a distraction from the day-to-day job. And I also think if you think you can build something, I know, right, maybe you're a very, very small business. I don't know. Maybe you're just an independent dentist or something like that. You just need something super basic. Then that probably works for you. But if you're looking at growth and scale and things like that, HubSpot are going to be able to work 100 times faster, creating things 100 times better than you ever will with AI. And you're going to benefit from that, from being within the ecosystem, right? From their technology and from their team and their vision and all that kind of stuff. So I can't see it being a good strategy if you want to kind of keep up with pace, I think.
No. And actually, when you think about what a CRM does, it has the critical data on it. It's a critical tech platform. It has customer information. It might have sensitive information. It's got the lifetime history. That's really important. Do you really want to do you want to put that in the hands of some people that want to have a go at building it and managing that? I mean, it's just too much of a risk.
To bring it back to the events industry for a second then, for those that are looking at HubSpot at the moment, maybe they're with another CRM system, they're looking at taking it up a step, they're looking at getting into the ecosystem. What do you think are the biggest wins they're going to see by jumping on board with HubSpot? And do they need to use it holistically? Because obviously it does more than just CRM, right? It does marketing, it does other aspects of that growth engine that you mentioned earlier. Like, what are the biggest wins and advantages organizers are going to see and publishers are going to see from getting into the system?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two types of customers we work with. People that are on another system like Salesforce, for example, or people that are at the minute using spreadsheets. Maybe they've got a custom system and it's just all over the place. So for those people, their biggest problem is fragmentation, right? They cannot get a single view of an exhibitor, of an attendee, a delegate at a conference. They can't really understand, did they come last year? Did they buy this? Did they do that? Very easily, right? So they got that information, but they have to log in that system, look at that spreadsheet. That stops them from using automation and AI properly, because these systems need to have a single source of truth. And when you then enable that, then you can start thinking about personalization. Then you can start thinking about, I'm going to use AI features to score people in terms of, we need to go and do some sales outreach to these people because we haven't spoken to them for a while. We need to invite this bunch of people that's in our CRM to this new conference we're organizing. And we're going to use AI lookalike lists inside HubSpot. And we might use the prospecting agent, which is the ability to go and autonomous or semi-autonomously research, write emails, send emails, communicate with people about a new conference or event we've got going. Having a single source of truth, CRM, allows you to do all those things. And that is, that's what everybody that I speak to, all of our events and publishing, that's just what they want to do. They just want the place that they can have a platform to do that. For those people that are on another system like Salesforce is a great and incredibly powerful, well-established system. It's not right for everyone. We frequently talk to people who say, I'm sick of it now. I need to move off because it's expensive to run, because every time I want to change something, a color on an email, a landing page, an automation, I've got to get someone in with like specialists. I have to have a Salesforce admin. They've got a backlog. They're expensive. It's just not agile. The license costs are expensive and they're locked into these deals. It doesn't really feel that connected even within the different clouds, the marketing cloud, the sales cloud. They're not necessarily, because of the way that Salesforce has acquired businesses and platforms over the years, they're not truly integrated. And it's just become a bit painful for people. And what they find moving to Salesforce, HubSpot, is fundamentally the UI and the experience of running HubSpot is lighter weight, easier. Once we've done an implementation, we're all about like helping people to run with it themselves. So it's more intuitive, it's faster to find your way around, it's faster to make changes, you do stuff yourself, you don't need external help. And that's the thing. So it's as powerful as Salesforce. It's easy to use and it's fast to adopt and fast to set up. That's really what we're finding with those customers.
So just on that point, because that's really interesting to me. Like, what does a journey look like? Because I think that's starting fresh with something or coming out of Google Sheets or spreadsheets is probably doesn't feel like that big of a jump, right? But going from an embedded system like Salesforce, which often is used by kind of the medium to larger size organizations, right? That's what that technology is aimed at. That could feel almost like a gigantic leap of faith and a huge amount of work in terms of getting not just company data and everything across and structured well and stuff like that, but then also the education element of technology, which people often miss, which is enabling the team to be able to use the tech. Because if you just throw it at them, people are not going to work it out. So like what would a typical journey look like for somebody within Salesforce working with you to get them over to the HubSpot?
Yeah, great question. So I think that the technical side of it, as in migrating data from Salesforce to HubSpot, is the easiest bit. And it's the bit that people generally assume is the hardest bit, because we basically plug Salesforce into HubSpot and just bring all the stuff over like that. And then there's a little bit of sort of manual work on top of that. So the technical bit is the easy bit. The people bit, you're right. That's harder. And that's about, educating and training and showing people how to do it. But generally speaking, they find it a much more intuitive system. The other bit is the process bit. And what we normally find is that when people are making that move, they want to use it as an opportunity to refresh things. So for example, I was talking to a customer the other day and they've got 372 workflows in Salesforce for sales and marketing stuff, right? And then you say, oh, gosh, that's a lot. Do you want them all brought over? And say, well, we only use like a third of them. So, right. And of those third, do they work for you? No, we probably, what we liked about HubSpot was the way it did this and did that. So it's normally an opportunity to have a bit of a fresh start. Keeping all your data, keeping all the history of everybody, keeping all the the processes that work, like the sales processes, etc. But layering in some new stuff. We talk about the idea of lifting and shifting. We don't want to do a lift and shift. We don't want to repeat all the mistakes and the things you don't like about Salesforce. We want to do a lift, a sift, and a shift. That makes sense.
That. Triple S.
We sift out all the rubbish and then we move forward with a much better system.
It sounds to me like when you move house and you get that skip.
Yeah.
Right. What are we taking with us? What can we just get rid of? It's interesting, isn't it? Because you get the skip out, the lift, the shift, and the skip. I think that's really interesting then. So the engineered bit of it, the data from one place to another is good, but you're actually more embedded in what we're taking with us, what looks good, what do we need to rebuild, what do we need to actually build fresh, and then the support of the team in actually being able to get familiar with the differences in layouts and the ways that obviously those things work and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to steal that analogy, actually. I think the house moving thing, that's exactly what it is, because it's like, people might move, so people will move from one house to the next house and the walls are different color. And that, I suppose that's the kind of like, oh, well, yeah, but I was used to it looking like this. Yeah, it's fine. It looks a bit different, but look how it does the same thing, but it just does it better.
Yeah. So I just show them the swim. Show them the swimming pool, because then they'll be like, oh, don't care what colour the walls are. I've got a swimming pool.
You've got a swimming pool at the back.
One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, because I think people can now go off and obviously you're quite visible online and there's lots of information on the website and stuff like that they can go and check you out and stuff like that. But I kind of alluded to it in my intro, and we really connected on this when we first started having a chat about, being male, being entrepreneurs, being business owners, being leaders. And you were quite open and honest and very, very frank with me about your own journey. And you said that you were obviously writing a book as well at the moment, which we can touch on lightly. I know that's still a thing in works, but kind of just about that book, what kind of drove you? What was the fire in you to kind of put that effort and that time into putting those thoughts into paper? I'm assuming to help other people that might have also been through a similar journey or going through a similar journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So one of my children has got acute OCD, and it's a strange condition, obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a very strange condition. It's very hard to explain what it is. It's not depression. It's not bipolar. It's not schizophrenia. It's not you're a bit OCD because you like to have all your pens lined up in a neat row. It's none of these things. It's just a very debilitating condition where you just have loads of intrusive thoughts that challenge who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing things. And your mind is just constantly processing this inner debate, essentially. And that can result in compulsions that are really detrimental to your life. My wife and I have been on this journey with our child who's just had very life-limiting kind of experience and is all sorts of challenging scenarios, medical situations, and so on, and dysfunctional behavior. And yeah, it's been incredibly difficult. So it's the first time in life where, being an entrepreneur and being a man, right, it's just like, just used to just plowing through things, aren't you? Just the answer to this is just work a bit harder, get your head down, being resilient, that's what we're all about. We can do this. And I think last year I got to the point where I just couldn't do that because I was selling the business. I was working incredibly. There was a huge amount of pressure on me and the sales team to meet the numbers for the sale, which we did, I'm pleased to say. But it was incredibly stressful because you feel like all of your life's work with it, building the business, it comes down to whether we hit these numbers and what the valuation is. And that was an enormous pressure. And then we had this stuff going on in our home life, which just broke me basically. So I just ended up having a mini breakdown and just not being able to function. And that was a really big, obviously a big moment in my life because I just had no tools to deal with it. I just didn't know how you're supposed to do it. The playbook of just get your head down and crack on doesn't work. And so, yeah, that was the moment where essentially, I just remember just being incapacitated, essentially unable to think and work, and I had to leave my desk thanks to the support of my business partner. I was able to just leave work, and I just had to take myself off and just try and just readjust and get my head straight. I mean, it wasn't really that straight afterwards, but just try and process what you're going through.
I can realize some of that in myself. I've never been, I wouldn't like to compare, I've never been through, I think, what you've been through. Both, I've never sold a business, and I don't have family that has the needs that your son does, right? And I can only imagine how hard, even without selling a business, that all must be to manage and maintain a team and be, somebody that's strong and positive all the time. And that's what a team really wants, isn't it? In a leader of a business and things like that, they want to feel confident that everything's good and positive and moving forward, and everybody's really happy and everything like that. But then to manage that with the challenges of a relationship and then a son and all that kind of stuff, I think as well, we are as men, have that kind of, you must just be tough and work it out and things like that. I think as well, in terms of, we're not given the space to talk to others and have those conversations and things like that. So my question, I guess, to you on the basis of that is, what advice would you give to other men, entrepreneurs, business owners that might be finding themselves in somewhat of a similar situation? Maybe they're trying to keep everything down, because I think it's easy for, especially as business owners, when the world's on fire around you, you kind of just go even more so into work, don't you? Because it's the one thing you feel like the space that you can control, kind of thing, which then obviously potentially makes family members feel like you're even more distant and things like that. So what advice would you give to others that maybe feel like they're in a similar situation or heading in a similar situation?
Yeah, I mean, so I sympathise with anybody that's going through anything like that, whether it's work or personal, whatever, or both. It's really difficult, and people will get through that. That's the first thing I want to say. But yeah, I think that men we've stacked it against ourselves, really, haven't we? We've made it really hard. And the point you were talking about there about being a leader, when there's a huge moment when I realized that if I opened up to my team about the challenges I was having at home, they didn't think anything less of me. They wanted to support me, because I think as a man, as a leader, you think, well, as you said, our job is to be super positive and to sort of make everything okay. And then we're scared of not, maybe I was scared of not projecting that persona. And in the end, I had to admit to them that I was struggling and I wasn't coping and had these issues. And the response to them was what helped me get through it, which is they were incredibly sympathetic and supportive and understanding. And I think ultimately that vulnerability that I showed to them has helped the business, if I'm honest. Like, it's helped create a culture of, it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a bad week, a bad month, have all these issues. But ultimately, we can support each other as a team. So that's the kind of business answer to that. Ultimately, bizarrely, I think it ended up being a benefit. I think as part of my journey, Aileen Moran, people probably know as an author, but when you read her book, so I read How to Be a Woman and What About Men, right? And what you realize about women, and we kind of know this because we've got wives and sisters and mums and all this stuff, but women have this innate ability to support each other, and they don't think anything of sharing their problems and checking in and bursting into tears and opening up. And that kind of solidarity doesn't exist with men, does it? Normally. And I think we're doing ourselves a real disservice. And there's no minister for men. There's no sort of equivalent of Mumsnet that I know of, anyway, for men. And so we lock all these things up, and we just try and muscle through it. Yeah. And actually, the best thing that anyone can do is to find somebody to share it with, and then as soon as you start offloading that to another man, then I think most men do have a vulnerable side that they will. Once you lower that guard of like the macho competitiveness, let's not talk about it because it's a bit awkward thing, it's incredibly liberating. So yeah, I mean, I would just say that find some people that you trust and share it with them.
I think that's fantastic advice, and such a clear picture for me I think women are fantastic at having those conversations early when they are having issues, so that they work through it early, and get out at the end, the other side positively. I've seen it in one of my closest friends where I didn't even know there was an opportunity to get involved until it was at a point where it had broken. And we could only try and help, me and our other friends could only try and help at that moment in time. And we couldn't help retrospectively because the months and or even years potentially of things going wrong in his relationship had come to a point and they'd broken, right? And most of the damage was done at that point. So you're right. I think as men, we could do with more ways to communicate with each other. I feel like I want an entrepreneur's, a business owner's kind of thing as well on that side of stuff, because there's the personal stuff, but then there's also the business stuff and the work stuff, right? And maybe the personal stuff is not the right place also for the business stuff, but they're both equally as important and things like that. Is there anything that you've brought out of that experience now that you will always carry forward with you? Maybe that's the way that it's a testament to your team and clearly that culture that you've built, that you've got such a great team, supportive team, that they were there to catch when you needed them to and things like that. But is there anything that you've now taken forward and is just part and parcel of the way that you manage your time and family and commitments and operate and make sure you don't slip back, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is self-care, and there's the idea that if you are very driven, if you are always moving on to the next thing, you've just sometimes got to just give yourself a break, and you've got to go, I'm heading towards a bit mini burnout here. I'm working really hard. I have to switch off. I have to be kind to myself. And knowing those signs, I think, is really important. But I think the biggest one that I've learned from all this is that as a man, like it was interesting what you're saying there about, like, if you're a man and you've got a friend who looks like they're struggling, but you can't quite break through to them. The problem that men have got is that our default is to sort of go in there with a solution. It's like, well, tell me what your problem is. Oh, you've got a problem with work or your relationship. Well, let's talk about some solutions. And that's just how we're programmed. I mean, I'm not going to sort of, apologize for that on behalf of men, but I think a lot of us are programmed like that. But actually what those people need, they just need someone to listen. And so I think I've got a lot better at listening and just sitting with people's problems and feelings, and just resisting the idea that you've got to say, well, have you tried this? Or what about that? Or my mate's done that. And they just need to be heard. And that is something I take forward in different places. And actually, again, thinking about the work application, in the sales process, there's such an innate sort of drive to sort of solve it and tell them how good you are and tell them what HubSpot does and all the rest of it. Actually, they just want to be heard. They want to know that you understand what they're trying to achieve, what their problems are, and that builds trust. And then with the trust, they'll take it as granted that you're a HubSpot expert and you're the HubSpot people in the country, etc. And then they'll buy from you. So I think it's like that empathy bit is what I now take, and much more conscious about being empathetic with people, which some people are naturally super empathetic, but some of us aren't naturally super empathetic. So that's something I work on every day.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think this all brings me back to where true value is, right? It's in being in front of each other, spending time with each other, being, that authenticity that comes with that, the relationships that get built out of that, the not feeling isolated and alone, whatever the challenge or problem or anything is. Back to your HubSpot point, finding your tribe, finding your people, finding your communities and things like that. That's what I love about being part of the events industry, because every strand of life and moment always comes back to great things started in front of people in rooms maybe I wasn't even supposed to be in at the time, and they always end with great times in rooms with people and things like that. The support network always comes out of being in a community or with people in a room somewhere in the world and things like that for an event or something like that. On the book, is there a timeline? Is there a horizon of when something like that might be out?
No, not really. No, because I'm still in it. It's going to be the working title is Dad of OCD, as in being a parent of somebody who's got acute OCD and what that is like from a man's perspective, from a dad's perspective, because there's the most incredible experts and mental health people out there that help. They're all predominantly female, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. they're brilliant. And you predominantly see mums taking their children to these clinics and to these therapists and stuff like that. And it's just like, where are the dads? Where are the men? And so I just want to write a book about like what that experience is like as a man, how we respond to things differently. You know, we tend to get more angry, I would say. Like I said, going back to that point about like listening rather than trying to solve it and trying to, you know, be the big strong dad that's going to make everything better when you can't. And how do you deal with that? So yeah, that's it's work in progress. So the book's work in progress. But I also want to say, Adam, like your bit about community as well, though, because obviously you've done an amazing job of building a community within the events industry. So kudos to you for doing that and helping to create a place where people can just get together and be themselves. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you, mate. It's something I've done a lot of thinking on over the last year, is stuff of like where our value is. And, you know, there's two things I see in the events industry that happen, and one tends to succeed and one tends to fail, and that's what is the ultimate goal of creating something like an event, right? And there's lots of businesses that launch events purely from a commercial perspective, right? They see a market, they see somebody else doing well, and they think, oh, we can have a slice of that and we can create something, and we can book a venue and create a floor plan or create sponsorship opportunities and blah, blah, blah. Get a sales team on it, do the numbers, everybody's happy. But they're never the ones that kind of last long or are the resilient ones, funnily enough. The ones that I see always are created because at the core of it, they just want to bring people together around and have a conversation, right? They want to provide a place for a community, or like I said earlier, subsets of a community, little niches and things like that, a place in a moment in time to come and learn and connect. And this is why things often happen where people that don't see themselves as event organizers ultimately become event organizers, but actually at the heart of it is just community. Just supporting a narrative, a conversation, a moment in time, and a thread wherever people are for whatever reason, and being the bit of the glue that sticks people together. And I think, you know, it's that comes back to your point about us as men and giving us that intrinsically is part of it as well. If we need to come together in order to be better or bigger, and things like that. So yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that. It's not very often I get comments like that, but I do appreciate it when I can. If the book is to be published, should we push people in the direction of maybe your LinkedIn account is a good place to follow you? I'm sure it's a great place to announce this type of thing and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm not massively public on those issues on my LinkedIn at the minute.
Okay.
And actually, that's a really interesting point, isn't it, about vulnerability and talking about things that you know, kind of some people would perceive as being outside of work, but I think it's really important. So yeah, and also I'd say if anybody wants to talk to me about any of the issues that we discussed, I'm more than happy to jump on a call with people and listen to them or share some of my experiences as well.
I think people really appreciate that. And also, obviously, if they want to jump over to HubSpot as well, and they've had enough of Salesforce.
Well, yeah.
Adam, I really appreciate you coming on. We've covered a lot. I'm quite varied, and it's a unique episode of the Event Tech Talk Show, because obviously, predominantly, we talk about software and tech and those kinds of things, and AI and all the wonderful things it can do for us. But I think in my conversations with you in the lead up to this recording, we really did connect on some really important kind of issues that even we've only gone lightly in at this moment in time as part of it. But I think they're really important conversations to have and to thread into these other business kind of conversations, right, that we have. Because otherwise, where's the right time and place? Do we need to create a little moment in time just specifically for that and put it in the corner? I don't think so. But I just thank you for being so open, not only with me, but with the listeners of the Event Tech Talk Show and our audience and things like that as well. So thank you for that.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Adam.
No problem. Well, that comes to the end of this episode of the Event Tech Talk Show. Please do go and follow Adam and the team there. They're doing amazing things in the markets, and they're supporting some great customers with what they need to do when it comes to CRM and marketing automations and go-to-market and things like that. If you like this episode, give it a like and a share on your preferred social podcast network platform. And we will see you in the next episode.